First tonight, a storm brewing over wages and conditions for the state's oil and gas workers. Earlier this week, the Federal Employment Minister warned of a wages breakout if unions and employers don't act responsibly in negotiating new agreements. It comes as WA's maritime workers are demanding a 22% pay rise over 4 years. Compensation, they say, for working in tough offshore conditions. But employers have rejected the demand, saying it comes on top of other large increases which are already eroding Australia's competitive edge. The threat of industrial action is now on the table. Catherine Diss reports.
It's been 4 years since maritime workers walked off the job, bringing Australia's oil and gas industry to a shuddering halt. It cost shipping companies almost $750,000 a day, the national economy millions, and eventually forced the industry to bow to a 30% pay rise over 4 years. Now the threat of similar action is again on the cards.
It's very frustrating, and you know, once you get backed into a corner and you've got no way out, then our members will decide if they're going to take strike action.
We thought we were making some progress last year. We dealt with some important issues the union stated were important, but we're at a situation where we just haven't brought the claims down out of the clouds into something realistic.
It's been a year since the parties started negotiating a new enterprise bargaining agreement for 2,500 maritime workers. They're the key transport link between the coast and offshore oil and gas platforms, delivering everything from people to goods and services. Their old agreement expired 6 months ago, but neither party appears close to reaching a deal.
There are some issues that we are determined to support, and that issue is about securing Australians in their own country, working in their own country, paying taxes in this country and securing their wages and conditions long term.
The main sticking points for the union are securing a 22% pay rise over the next 4 years. The industry is only offering 16.5%. They also want a clause in their EBA guaranteeing that Australians will be trained and hired before foreign workers, and a shorter roster of 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, rather than 5 weeks offshore at a time. While the industry believes it's addressed the issue of foreign labour, it says the other major claims remain unrealistic. It claims most workers already earn between $170,000 and $240,000 a year.
We have very clearly indicated that 22% is not in the realm of a wage increase that can be countenanced, but there are simply too many claims on the table. The MUA's got a myriad of claims which potentially not only add to the 22% but increase it to upwards or potentially the realms of 50% to some operators.
The construction of several liquefied natural gas projects off the Australian coast in tandem over the past 5 years has given workers the upper hand when securing pay rises. Research shows wages for maritime workers have grown by about 50% over that period.
We've got 6 LNG projects in Australia under construction, a very limited workforce, and the unions have taken the opportunity to gain significant wage increases for their members. Unfortunately, that will be a negative in the longer term because it will mean less work in time.
Murray Meaton is an economic consultant who helps run the numbers for resource companies. He says high wages have been a factor in cost blowouts on major resource projects off the WA coast. The Gorgon Gas project is one example. Its cost has increased by $17 billion since it was signed off on in 2009. But unions argue logistical and managerial problems are mostly to blame.
Our workplace productivity is around 30% less than the United States, and our wages are up to 30% higher. Now, to me, that roughly translates into an operating cost in Australia of potentially 50% higher than the United States. That means, of course, that it will be dramatically higher than Africa or our Asian competitors.
And it's raising questions about whether Australia is pricing itself out of contention. Just last week, oil and gas giant Shell sold its stake in WA's Wheatstone gas project as part of its strategy to get a better return on its assets. Australia's high labour costs likely to have played a part. Woodside is pursuing floating LNG technology for its Browse gas field, and ExxonMobil is considering the same move for its Scarborough gas field off Exmouth. But new developments aren't the only ones under question.
I understand that Chevron were contemplating a fourth train for the Gorgon project and that project has been deferred.
There are considerable competitive pressures coming on the industry, not only from the developing world but from our fellow OECD countries, and we need to be cost competitive against those type of operations.
Mr Meaton believes companies will continue to opt for cheaper development options or go elsewhere.
We will see some more projects, but in order to overcome the high labour costs here, we'll see a trend towards floating LNG.
But it doesn't bring the same benefits to the state or its workforce.
A lot of the specialised equipment on FLNG vessels will need to come from overseas, and a lot of that equipment may well go back overseas to be serviced.
If floating LNGs come into play over here, you'd be costing local jobs of somewhere in the vicinity of 7,000 and the spin-off. So, you know, we're against it.
But the union denies its wage and foreign labour demands are forcing companies down that path.
My members are there working in extreme conditions of employment. They work hard and we believe they're entitled to a fair wage. We don't think it's extraordinary whatsoever in respect to what the employers are saying about wage costs and blowouts.
While the dispute over wages will continue to play out, both parties are hoping the other side blinks first and soon.
What we want to see is the MUA pull back from any threat of strike action. We want to see it provide a clear indication it's going to come back to the bargaining table.
Let's hope that it doesn't get into a disputation, but we won't be walking away from our major claims.